Okay, homework problem 2-2. This problem is asking you to compare two bonds, a corporate bond that has a yield of 8% and a muni bond that pays 6%. The relevant points in this question are the fact that the munis are typically tax exempt and corporate bonds are not tax exempt. For those of you that are potentially looking at this as an investment down the line, the things that you do need to consider are the facts that munis are going to be federal exempt, but may not always be exempt at the state level where you're at, and if you're subject to a local tax, it's highly unlikely that the muni will be tax exempt at the local level. Locals always like to get their tax. So this question then is getting at, if we consider there's a pre-tax return of 8%, when is it going to be in terms of post-tax? So that is, if we have pre-tax return, so looking at line 6, if we have a pre-tax return and then we back out for the tax that we have to pay, what is our after-tax return? And so what we're saying then is, well, if we have a bond that pays 8% and another one pays 6%, when are we indifferent? And then this also sets up to when would we want to invest in the corporate and when would we want to invest in the municipal. So if there is no tax in the case of munis, the pre-tax less 0 is equal to the post-tax. So the pre-tax is equal to the post-tax rate. And again, what we're saying is, we know what the pre-tax return is on both of these. It's 8% and 6%. But what is the post-tax, where the corporate bond is going to be equal to the post-tax return on the municipal of 6%? We can then set this up where the pre-tax return is less the pre-tax return times the tax rate is equal to the post-tax return. And what that looks like mathematically is, in the case of the corporate bond, we're saying we get 8%, and we're going to subtract out the 8% times the tax rate. So whatever that tax rate is will be equal to the 6%. So we can rearrange this by where we take this term, drop it on the other side. 8 is equal to 6 plus this term. Then we can just easily move the 6 over. So 8 subtract 6 is equal to 2. That's then equal to 8% times our tax rate. Then we just divide both sides by 8%. And what we're left with is the tax rate must be equal to 0.25 or 25%. So what this is saying is, if the tax rate is 25%, we're indifferent between the corporate bond and the municipal. But if we're an investor with a tax rate of 15%, we would want to invest in the corporate bond because we will have a higher after-tax rate of return. Whereas if the tax rate is higher, say 35%, we would want to invest in the municipal. And the ways that we can see this up, let's just say we have 0.08, 0.08, and then we have a tax of 0.15 or 0.35. When will we be better off? So we're going to say, well, it is equal to this amount times this, and we can see how much is taken out for tax. So if we then subtract our amount, so what we're saying here is, this is the return. So we have a return of 8%, and here's our tax rate. Again, tax rate of 15%, 35%. This is how much will be paid in tax. So we'll have to pay, of our total 8%, 1.2% will go to tax when the tax rate is 15%, and when it's 35%, 2.8% of the 8% we earn will go to tax. So our after-tax return is equal to our return less tax. And so we see when the tax rate is below 25%, we actually get an after-tax return of 6.8%. And when the tax rate goes to 35%, we have an after-tax rate of return of 5.2%. So obviously 6% is better than 5.2. And then when the rate is 25%, we see, well, 2% of our 8% goes to tax, and then our after-tax return is 6. So this was what we were saying in terms of the answer, and we can see we're better off to invest in the corporate bond when the tax rate is 15%. When the tax rate is 35%, we'd invest in the municipal because it gives us a 6% return versus 5.2%. All right, hope that helps.